I'm Sander, coming for you from the Killer Whales Academy. And today we're going to address the elephant in the room. We're going to talk about Bitcoin at an all-time high and what does it mean for a beloved altcoin market? And what is happening in the Solana and the SUI ecosystem? All of that we're going to cover today. We've made a tremendous explanation about what is happening in both ecosystems and how the price movement and the all-time high of Bitcoin is going to influence price movement. Make sure that you register and subscribe to the channel. Have a look at the Killer Whales Academy and see if you're open to receive more and more of these daily updates. But until then, you take a look, but first watch this video. And we're going to dive in directly. Let's open up some charts and let's have some fun. Okay, guys, here's the beautiful chart of Bitcoin. I think a lot of people have been watching this chart and we're extremely bullish about what is happening with Bitcoin. Right now, what we're seeing is that Bitcoin is, just had an all-time high. This is a daily chart, so this actually happened today. It got all the way up to 111.5. So this means that we're breaking structure. We're breaking the previous all-time high, and it's going to be a very interesting couple of days, especially the next week, because what we have achieved now is that there is this golden cross here. So for people that don't know exactly what a golden cross is, here you can see it. Every time a golden cross comes in, there is a break of structure in the sense of the price goes up, because it's a bullish signal. And let's see where we had like this. So let's take this one. Last time it happened, price of Bitcoin went up 62%. And we can find a couple of other examples in this chart that we're going to talk about today, where you definitely see the price moves up after a golden cross occurs. Now, what is a golden cross? So let's get into that as well. Let me get away of the bull market support band. So what actually happens at a golden cross is that the 50-day moving averages crosses above the 200-day moving average. And that means a bullish signal to the market. That means that short-term price action is accelerating comparison to the 200-day, so longer-term price action. And this is typically has been an indicator for a bull market or a price bump. Nevertheless, we can say we're in a bull market. And you can see it here. You can see it occurring here. You can see it occurring probably a little bit further down below. Let me go here. So you can see it occurring here. And each and every time when this happens, the price moves up 40% here. When this happens, the price moves up to at least here. And actually, then the price bump actually goes higher. So it's actually even more. But okay, guys, so that is what we actually see today in the charts. And it's going to be very interesting to have a look around, what is actually happening in the market. So if we start talking about, okay, what part of the cycle we're in, and when is it time to go into a full-blown altcoin season? What we see here is the path to altcoin. I think a lot of you crypto OGs already know this chart. For the new people in the academy and new people joining in with us with Hello Crypto, this is typically how the market moves. So typically the market moves with Bitcoin going up, Bitcoin price increasing, Google trending, people are talking in the news about Bitcoin, typically 1 year after the halving occurs. And what it means is that Bitcoin goes up, attention rises for the crypto industry. And what people start doing is flipping the profits from Bitcoin into Ethereum. This is the major alt, the biggest alt out there. I think some people will debate whether or not this might be Ethereum and Solana, for example. But we definitely will have followed this path about 4 cycles now. So we're going to keep track of that. And basically people start buying Ethereum, and then when Ethereum starts going up as well and it starts outperforming Bitcoin, that's when the larger caps start benefiting from the liquidity that is being put into the markets. So, and that's what we're going to talk about today a little bit more, these large caps. What about SUI? What about Solana? And then maybe later on, what then happens when these coins actually go up and what then the money flows into the altcoins. But that's a little bit later in the cycle. So let's start talking about that and let's see where we are. Okay, guys, so let's have a look at, how does a typical market move, right? So everybody thinks that we're going to talk about this, but I'll get to this, and I will show you where this chart actually comes from. And I'm a Dutchie, some of you know that, but the funny thing is this chart was actually invented in the 1600s. And in the 1600s, we had a similar thing happening that what happened to Bitcoin. In the 1600s, the Dutch found the tulips. They were producing the tulips, and there were these little bulbs, and people went crazy for that. And the thing with that is that you can't produce a lot of tulips in one go. It takes time, it takes research, it takes you understanding, how it works. But people were awed globally for the first time ever about the beauty of these tulips. So what happened? Limited supply, growing demand, and there's only one distributor mechanism, and that are the tulip producers in the Netherlands. And what actually happened, the price went up so much that basically a tulip got to the price where a normal laborer needed to pay 200 times their monthly salary to actually be able to afford the tulip, which is insane, right? But we're seeing the same thing with Bitcoin. So this is where this chart actually originates. And it tells us about, there are people that are coming in. There's a bear trap. I think we've seen this all. And then the media attention comes in. There is enthusiasm, greed. And then we're all like, oh, we're all smart. We're all making buckloads of money. There is no way this is going to stop. And then we get the initial fallback. The believers, the bull trap, will say, okay, well, this is a bull trap. Let's get back in. And then everything actually sells off. And we've seen this again and again and again in a bull market. This chart does exactly the same. It's exactly the same chart. It is just translated into something that Wall Street says. And you can see this in this chart, right? So this is a daily, but it will do the trick. Let's see what now. I'm going to change to a weekly. Whoop, let's make it a little bit smaller. So what you can see here, this chart, this pick up, and wave down. You can just see it very clearly here on the chart. Here's another one, but here we go. Up, down, up. Small retrace, but this is also COVID induced, and we go up. Bull trap, go up, and we go into a bear market. And what we're seeing now is exactly the same. And it if you put it in a logarithmic scale, it even gets more clear. But you can definitely see these charts playing out. Okay, guys. So again, Bitcoin all-time high. We've already learned that probably either Bitcoin is going to go up a little bit higher. We can cover that in another video. Our thesis has always been end of May, beginning of June, about 150, 120, and then probably go through the summer. Not too rocky, keep it calm around 90 to 110. And then in September, October, November, we have that final peak blow off the top in the bull market. And we hope it's going to reach 140. I've been hearing crazy numbers around 300K and 400K and stuff like that. And it could definitely happen. It's not off the table, but my own analysis and, what would be typical and logical for the market is anything between 125 and 160. So, you could devise a strategy on that. Now, let's flip this into, how the market looks at this. So the fear and greed indicator is at 73, which is pretty greedy, not too greedy. Typically, the advice is whenever you get into extreme greed, sell some of your portfolio and wait until it falls back and into the red or the orange, and then start buying back the portfolio that you sold off. That's typically the best investment strategy. That's also why you get out of these like 80, 90% drops of coins that you're holding in your wallet. Now, you may question yourself, why is the price of Bitcoin going up? Well, there are a couple of reasons for that. So one, Trump got in office. That's not a reason by itself, a very bad reason by itself, but it definitely gave the outlook of a pro-Bitcoin government, a Bitcoin strategic reserve, and a lot of acceptation and acceleration of the Bitcoin thesis saying, hey, this is money, not an investment. This is a store of value, better than gold, more modern. You can move it quickly. So, and Bitcoin is valued at 2 trillion. Gold is valued at 16 trillion. So there is a big gap there. So one of the other things that is happening is this chart. I'm going to show you, it's a big chart. It goes all the way back to like 1997. But this is basically the money supply, the US money supply. And what you've seen is that during the last bull market, especially around COVID, the US government printed a lot of dollars. This is quantitative easing, QE. You might hear that as well. What happens basically is that the federal government starts printing money, putting money into the system to make sure that people are liquid, banks can pay their debts, the US treasuries are available, they can repay their debts, et cetera, et cetera. But this money eventually flows into the market. And what you see is that money flowed into the market and it basically kicked off like a major bull run for Bitcoin. And after the all-time highs of Bitcoin, basically quantitative tightening came in, interest rates went up, and that's when you see like liquidity exiting the market. But ever since April, May, you see the money supply growing, and this is going to continue to grow. Predictions are this is going to grow even with 1 to 2 trillion in the next 2 years. So this is again a 10-20% bump. Why is this important? Because this is very interesting for risk assets. So all the hedge fund managers, all the investors, everybody with a little bit of money on the side is looking to have gains on their capital. And what will they seek out? The best performing asset. And the best performing asset is Bitcoin. And if you play it right, first Bitcoin, then Ethereum, and then the altcoins. So that's what we're going to talk about today. The other reason why this is working so well for these risk assets is because if the money supply increases, so does inflation. And if you put your money on the side, on a bank, or maybe you get a little bit of interest, you're never going to compensate for 10, 15, 20% of liquidity injections into the market and inflation. So effectively, if you put your money in a bank, your $100 will be worth $95 the next year. And it will be worth maybe $90 the year after. And it goes on, goes on, goes on. So this is one of the reasons why we're bullish on Bitcoin. And this is one of the reasons why we think in the next couple of months, the price will continue to rise and go up. Okay, guys. So we've talked an awful lot about Bitcoin and, trying to explain why we think that there is a really good chance of a very promising altcoin market in the second half of the year, when we see Bitcoin making all-time highs for right now, 22nd of May, global pizza day. Everybody understands that story, but if you missed that, it's 14 years ago, I believe, 13 years ago, that somebody bought 2 pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoin. So, and globally, everybody celebrates Bitcoin Pizza Day. So if you're looking to do something tonight or looking to eat something, make sure you eat a pizza and remember, how cool it is that 30 years ago, somebody was able to actually buy a couple of pizzas with Bitcoin. Don't think about the value, but think about the message that is going from that, and remember that. So let's go into the next step and let's start looking at where can we compare this information and how do we treat it and what do we do with it to look into SUI and Solana. As you guys know, I also do quite some investments, early stage, and SUI was the one that actually got away because I wasn't paying attention to that part of the market. SUI, as you guys can see, has made a tremendous price development. So they launched around the $1.5 billion market cap. Now, only 16, 17 months later, has 10x almost to a $13.5 billion market cap. Now, let's dive a little bit into SUI and what they're doing. So let me see where the right, okay, so SUI. Okay, so let's start here, right? So what you need to understand is that SUI is built on a move language, where most of the blockchain we know are built on EVM language, BNB chain, Ethereum, Polygon, a lot of the familiar L1s blockchains are built on EVM. Move is a coding language that was developed in the Libra project by Meta, back then Facebook. In 2019, Meta and Facebook were experimenting with building a blockchain and trying to create this digital currency called Libra. And when the leadership of Facebook and Meta saw that governmental and regulatory approval were years away, they basically scrapped the project. And what then happened was that two or three teams took the open source information that Meta was building with these blockchains and said, hey, let's rebuild our own blockchain and let's bring this to the market. To ensure that it was easy to build on the blockchain, the Meta team actually developed the Move programming language. So it is a new programming language, partially built and making use of Rust programming language, but really built to make sure that it's safer, more scalable, and it's very easy to use. The downside of that is that not a lot of people actually know how to program it. It's a new language. Not a lot of people understand it. A lot of people are actually, working with already. So SUI has this very revolutionary basis being built within the Meta ecosystem. You don't need to explain that a lot of very skilled and very talented developers were working there. But at the same time, they have developed a coding language that actually nobody knew how to operate and how to work with. So faster, quicker, greatly talented, well-backed against, okay, how do we grow this ecosystem? And that is super interesting because SUI is making those moves. We were at the SUI event at Token 2049 in Dubai, and what we saw there absolutely blew my mind. It was buzzing. It was busy. I saw all our killer whales KOLs. They were all going there. We were talking about how the ecosystem was developing. Me and the Hello Labs team were there talking to different projects, looking into like, hey, what are you guys building? Why is it so interesting, et cetera, et cetera. And we heard firsthand from the SUI Hub and the SUI leadership what their next moves were, and we were impressed. We were really impressed. And it actually rang a bell. It rang a bell for me when I was in Singapore for Token 2049 in September 2023. And let's say it how it was. Europe and the US was still in a bear market. It was still trying to recover from the 2022 crash. It was not positive. It wasn't negative, but it wasn't positive. It wasn't like, we're building, we have this vibe, like we're building, the technology of tomorrow and the crypto industry is going to take over the world and stuff like that. That wasn't there. But when I went to Solana Breakpoint and Token 2049 in Singapore, I had exactly the same vibes as I had with SUI event in Dubai just a couple of weeks ago. It was buzzing. People were talking games, DEXs, smart developers, NFTs, great speakers, a can-do mentality, young, ambitious builders. It was popping. It was like, wow, this is going to be, the next big thing. Solana is going to be the next big thing. And back then, Solana was very cheap. It was like trading at like $9 or something like that. So I didn't act on that. I didn't buy a big bag Solana or I didn't long it at all. I was just like there, wow, and I was busy with a lot of other stuff. So I actually forgot to do the trade. A lot of legendary trades have been done on that move by people that were at the same event. So I'm not making that error again. So being at the SUI event actually gave me that comparison to Solana, that insight. And I think that what we're going to see in the next couple of weeks is going to be very interesting. So let's like quickly compare them, right? Let's go back to CoinMarketCap and let's start looking at like the top chains. So let's discuss Solana like quickly. So right now price point at like 176, guys. When I was there, it was like $9. It was like crazy. Okay, but nevertheless, but with a market capitalization of about $91 billion. $91 billion. Don't forget that. This is the technology of the future. And I think one of the more interesting things is that the supply of Solana isn't like really capped. They can still print a little bit more. But it has a big market cap. It still goes up. It moves well on market movement. It goes up tremendously whenever Bitcoin starts moving. And you can see it perform on a daily basis. But it is at the level of BNB. It is definitely one of the bigger ecosystems out there. And it's mainly driven, of course, by a lot of volume from meme coins, a lot of volume from building projects that are building some good utility, but they are not. Well, in my belief, they're not necessarily like developing the next future of something, right? So you can also see it recently, like projects like Filecoin, Trump, Launchcoin. These are more or less all projects that are being built to drive meme coin, drive communities, etc., which is a very powerful narrative, super powerful narrative. But then if you compare it to SUI, the underdog, the younger brother, we're going to get to that as well, because there's a big difference there as well that explains this, is it's at $4, but that doesn't matter because price comparison, they don't work because the supply is different, but it's at $30.5 billion, which is, help you guys, it's like 16, 17% of what Solana worth is right now. So, the downside is, there is more and more circulation coming to the market. So that means that, the price increasements won't be as incremental as, for example, Solana would be, but nevertheless, there's a little bit more upside. So let's go into these and have a look at, okay, if you then look at like SUI. So SUI went to market in January 2024. I see that it's only getting tracked a little bit later, but it was at the market a little bit earlier. I need to double check. Let's see. Yeah, because here price movements are starting January 15, 2024. So that is, that is like 16 months ago. It starts tracking a little bit earlier. Oh, yeah, correct. Okay, sorry, I was wrong. Yeah, it starts tracking a little bit earlier. So it's May 8th, 2023, which is now 2 years, which is absolutely crazy to have that traction. Then if you look at Solana, Solana has been around for a lot longer. It launched in January 2020. So that is more than 5 years ago. And you can see it had a similar chart as SUI, having this bump up, then going all the way down, then having this bump up again. So you can see that Solana is more than 3 years older than SUI, and that, you would say, wow, SUI is already 2 years old, or, why does that matter? But it takes time to develop the right technology. It takes time to get liquidity onto the chain. It takes time to, mature in terms of like listing, vesting, VCs might want to come on board or exit a little bit. So there's always this movement. But you can see that, an early investor in Solana is up 21,000%, which is insane. Whereas, and again, this price tracking isn't correct. It's up 140%. So the upside is still there, and it's going to be very interesting to witness what is going to happen. We talked about this chart. So what you can see in the RSI, it's at the 65%, which is, not that crazy. Typically, SUI doesn't go way below because it's still a building chain. There is a lot of movement, a lot of growth potential. It tells you a little bit about where they are. And I can definitely see SUI go all the way up to the $30 billion market cap, which is a 3x from here, it's a little bit less than a 3, it's 2.5x, but it's very interesting to see what they can do and how they can build it, especially with new partnerships, new rollouts, new technology being developed. If you have a little bit of time, I would definitely recommend watching the video of the SUI event at Token 2049, where the keynote presentation was held by the founder, explaining what they're going to do next and what they made good on their promises that they were making a year before. So if you watch that, 100% look into, okay, are these guys actually building? What is their vision? Do I align with that? And do we think that developer activity can go up? And with that, pricing can go up. Okay, guys, then let's dive into Solana. So let's look at this chart. So you can definitely see here that Solana started like super small. And then in 2021, it got this first massive peak up and then a massive run up to like $80 billion. And let me remind you, SUI is here right now. It's at that $12-13 billion market cap. Just look at what happened to Solana. This move, this can just happen with SUI if they play the cards right, if the market supports that thesis, and if they're able to execute on building and attracting liquidity into the market. And what is interesting with Solana is, this pump was unsustainable. It was hype of, peak of the bull market. So it went all the way down. Of course, we had FTX, which was a major holder of Solana tokens, got liquidated, selling off all these tokens. And here we found ourselves like even at the deepest of the bear market at a $5 billion valuation. And then by the time I got wind of what they were building, they were like $9 billion valuation. You can see where they are now, right? You can see where they went. They went all the way up to like $143 billion market capitalization, which is the same as about XRP right now. Again, unsustainable, but there is definitely a lot of movement in this chart. And then if you would put them side by side, you can definitely see the same structures occurring. You can see the structure where, you have this first part, you break above like, a new resistance, or sorry, a new support, and it basically stays there. It basically stays there. And what we see with Solana, that the price could go up, but where does it end, right? People are screaming at $1,000 on Solana, which would be absolutely massive and crazy. But it could happen. Why wouldn't it happen? And then at the same time, you see SUI has had this a little bit more gradual build-up where it actually sets a new all-time high, dips below it, and then goes above it, and then tries to stay up top of it. And the same structure in the market is happening where, they break out of this consolidation and they move upwards. And, both the timings are really well, but you already see that SUI is performing better than Solana in a sense from this breakout of the structure. And that is all about narrative. The last 1.5 years was all about meme coins. As you guys know, I like meme coins. I like the community. I like the fun. But for me, the real craze and hype, the last couple of years wasn't the meme coins. For me, it was more in NFTs back in the day, like 4 or 5 years ago. But I quickly decided if my investment thesis wants to stay alive, and I want to do the smart thing, and I want to be fueled by my passion for innovation and real tech founders, then the meme coin market wasn't for me. Solana was, because they're powering this entire meme coin industry. But what I see now, and the narratives that the major exchanges and the big VCs have been chasing for the last 18 months, were BTC, DeSci, RWAs, AI, and now there is a big focus on DeFi. SUI works and operates and has programs on most of these elements. They have already announced big partnerships on this end, and they're about to announce even more. So keep your eyes open on SUI in that aspect if you like this, like builder thesis and this market orientation type of thesis. I do have to say that Solana is very robust and very strong, but does it have the upside on pure meme coin frenzy? Yes, we all know how strong it is. It can go back to $300, $500, maybe even. Do I think that SUI could go to $15, $20, maybe even a little bit higher? I do think so. And that means that you would 4x, 5x your money, which is a higher potential upside than Solana has. Okay, guys. So building technology is not easy. And we already mentioned that SUI is built on a Move language. And of course, we've seen 4 major chains on Move go to market. And I know of a couple of more that are actually building. We have SUI, first to market, Aptos, really interesting chain, same team from Meta, same group of people that said, hey, we've seen this technology, let's build it, let's be the fastest, quickest, most secure. That is what Aptos is. Another one that has has launched recently, and it's a personal favorite of mine as well, it's Supra. And Supra has been building on this language for a while. They started off with an Oracle service. They are integrated to, I believe, 70 or 80 different L1 nets, so they can basically provide any type of like Oracle service to anyone at a lowest cost price tier. Have an operating business model, and they decided, hey, once we have done this, let's go back to our original thesis and let's build the L1 on top. So it's a very interesting proposition. A lot of innovation in that space, like SUI, Aptos, Supra. And there also was another chain launch that actually had the name Move. They've done a well launch, but there are kind of like some back and forth on that, so we're not going to cover them. So in this Move ecosystem, there are, I would say, 3 big chains that you need to look into, like SUI, Aptos, and Supra. All of them building something unique and something very interesting. The reason why I'm saying this is all based on Move language, where Solana is based on Rust. And Rust language, there are not a lot of chains using. There are a couple of other ones using Rust, for example, Reef, but in some shape or form, they're all like converting into EVM. So they're all trying to like say, yeah, well, Rust is my home language, or Move is my home language, but we're going to tap into the EVM chain. So there is an easier exchange of data, technology, et cetera, et cetera. But what is more important is that whenever SUI or Aptos or Supra or any Rust coding language taps into EVM, that means that they tap into liquidity. And that means that then, with the majority of liquidity being on EVM chains, can actually flow into these Move protocols. So again, there's definitely some upside to these Move languages, but they're competing for the same developers. They are competing for a group of developers that is pretty new. So making sure that you have the right talent is very hard. But SUI is the biggest. SUI is the most forward-looking, and SUI is definitely well-positioned to win that race. So for the rest, you can definitely have a look at, how do the technology and the consensus work. I won't trouble you too much with that, but you can see the market cap change. You can also see that there's still a lot more volume going on around on SUI on a 24-hour base than Solana. Oh, sorry, there's a lot more volume on Solana instead of on SUI. So that is definitely something there. And in the past, Solana has faced a lot of outages, et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes they were being marked, especially in the bear market. But they've actually, improved a lot since then. And there is also a little bit of further on Solana being centralized, which is true. And it speaks against, our nature of like trying to make things decentralized, in control of the people instead of a company or a government. So that's also why I like SUI more than Solana. Okay, going a little bit further into another important metric that you might do not know, but it's all about TVL. And TVL stands for total value locked. And that means that people are putting forward their Bitcoin, their stable coins, their Ethereum to stake on the chain, have them have the liquidity, and make sure that the rewards that are coming from the ecosystem and the gas fees actually have liquidity behind it. But it is also being used to incentivize trading, incentivize building, et cetera, et cetera. So you can see how much bridged TVL, DeFi TVL is on these chains. So Ethereum leads with 100 billion, then Solana with 11 billion. And then you need to go a little bit lower, but it's 2.5 billion that is currently in DeFi protocols on SUI. Again, 4x, 5x TVL lower than Solana. But in some shape or form, it's going to be very interesting to see how they grow this, because Arbitrum Base, Bitcoin, BSC, Ethereum, these are all EVM chains. So, how are these going to move along? So we covered this. You can see how many Rust developers there are, 2.8 million in 2023, which is a huge difference. A lot of more talent, a lot more people building, and a lot more utilities being out there. So we covered this chart. We covered this. We're not going to talk about that. I was not going to talk about this. I think we got through most of the information that we wanted to share. So guys, again, let's have a look at what BTC is doing. BTC is still, at the 110, 111. So this is bullish for the market. I guys talk to you about, what I feel about SUI, why I think they're going to go up, why it is bullish. You also see the golden cross about to occur. Let's see whether it is on the Solana chart. Yeah, you can see it here, right? So also the golden cross on the Solana chart is quite a bit off. So that could indicate that if the general market is going up, Solana would go up harder because that golden cross needs to be pulled up. So this is also something that could be very interesting, but typically we see the explosion of price when that golden cross occurs. So that again makes me on a short term, like SUI is probably going to pump harder than Solana. And the other thing is true as well. I think long term, SUI might have more potential depending on how they play their cards. Nevertheless, Solana is out there. Solana has great backers, a great team, a persistent community. They're definitely going to do well. I think if you invest right now in an altcoin market, it could easily retrace to the all-time highs. The question is, how much higher can it go? And what is the ROI in your trade? I think it will be a maximum of a 2x. Whereas I think that with SUI, you could potentially do a 3x or maybe a 4x. So once again, guys, there's some more information in the Killer Whales Academy and Hello Crypto. We talk about these topics every day. So whenever you're like, hey, team, Killer Whales Academy team, Sander, Nosh, Maurice, have a look at Nathan, of course. Have a look at this chart. Have a look at this project and let us know what you guys think. We're more than happy to answer that. And make sure that you join our trading community and join our trading group in Discord and Telegram. And we can share this information on a daily basis with you guys. So until then, Bitcoin is at an all-time high. Let's have some fun. Let's make sure we keep our eyes and ears open on the altcoin market that appears to be coming up. And let's have some fun. And don't forget, trade smart and make sure you take some profits. See ya.